Welcome to my first episode on Quasar. Wendell Vaughn first appeared in Captain America number 217, released in December of 1977, calling himself Marvel Boy. Over 2 decades later, and after more than 30 appearances, we're given Quasar's origin story in Quasar number 1, printed in 1989. Even though the story is printed in 1989, the events within take place in the late 70s. This story, like so many superhero stories, begins not with the hero, but with his father. Quasar number 1 opens with Nick Fury, currently director of S.H.I.E.L.D., giving a presentation about the quantum bands to a group of 4 Stark employees, including Tony Stark. Leading the group of 3 Stark scientists is Dr. Gilbert Vaughn. During the presentation, we learn that S.H.I.E.L.D. believes that Robert Grayson, aka Marvel Boy of the 1950s, is the same individual who came back decades later as the Crusader. For the full story on Marvel Boy and the Crusader, watch my Marvel Boy series. After the Crusader disintegrated himself, Reed Richards confiscates the quantum bands, but due to international security reasons, he was obliged to turn them over to S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. wants Stark Industries to examine the quantum bands and see what makes them tick. Tony Stark makes it clear that Stark International is no longer in the weapons business before asking Gilbert what he thinks they should do. Gilbert states that he's always eager for a new opportunity to study more extraterrestrial objects, and Stark Industries is given a 6-month contract to study the quantum bands. On their way out of the meeting, Gilbert asks Nick if it would be alright to see his son Wendell, who is on the premises training to be a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. Nick then has Dum Dum Dugan take Gilbert to see his son. Wendell Vaughn is in the middle of his final exam in hand-to-hand combat and has been paired up against one of the best fighters in his class. Wendell holds his own, but fails to take the opponent down while his father watches from the observation booth. Dugan offers to pull Wendell out of class, but oddly Gilbert refuses the offer and asks Dugan to never let his son know that he was there. This is the first time we get a hint that something might be off in the way that Gilbert Vaughn interacts with people. The next day, Wendell is called in for a review of his S.H.I.E.L.D. training finals. Dugan praises his scores, noting that Wendell is the top of his class in combat tech, surveillance, and cryptography. Despite his high scores, Wendell is told he still has one major problem. He isn't aggressive enough. He lacks the killer instinct and a desire to win at all cost. Wendell lets Dugan know that he is aware of this, and he was told the same thing when he was in the service. Side note, Wendell is a college graduate who served as a lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Dugan commends Wendell on being good at nearly everything a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent is supposed to be good at, but he advises that without the fighting edge, Wendell will never serve as a field agent. Wendell is afraid that this means he is flunked out of the academy, but Dugan reassures him that they would be a fool to turn away someone with Wendell's ability. Wendell views this news as though he's failed and walks out of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters on a 1-week furlough awaiting his field assignment with his head held low. The next day we switch to Stark International, just outside of Pittsburgh. Dr. Gilbert Vaughn is conducting tests on the wristbands. The bands are capable of absorbing every wavelength of energy on the electromagnetic spectrum, but Gilbert doesn't have the slightest idea how to get the energy back out again. Dr. Zane decides to step out for a breather and offers to pick up food for the rest of the staff on his way to the lounge. Dr. Zane has the lounge to himself and pulls out a radio transmitter disguised as a pen and sends out a short transmission indicating the location and security detail for the quantum bands. 3 days later, we drop in on Wendell Vaughn, who has returned to his childhood home to visit his mother while waiting to hear back on his S.H.I.E.L.D. placement. Wendell is depressed about the results of his S.H.I.E.L.D. finals, spending his days alone in his room and worried that he won't be capable of doing anything to make his parents proud. Wendell's mother is proud of him, but she's afraid that the kind of man his father is doesn't allow him to show his feelings and reminds Wendell that it was Gilbert's rigid and personal way that made it impossible for them to stay married. Wendell shows a brief spark of life when his mother hands him a letter from S.H.I.E.L.D. containing his field assignment. But even this excitement is soon dashed when he realizes that he's been assigned to security for his father's S.H.I.E.L.D. project. Somebody at S.H.I.E.L.D. most likely thought that they were doing Wendell a favor, but to Wendell it feels as though his failure to become a field agent is being paraded around in front of his dad. Agent Wendell Vaughn reports for duty 2 days later and is given the assignment of watching after the quantum bands during live field testing. In walks William Wesley, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s top tech jockey who has tested every vehicle, weapon, body armament, and toothbrush S.H.I.E.L.D's ever tossed together. The testing soon begins in an adjacent building. Wendell notes that his father still hasn't noticed that he's present. As William Wesley slides his hands into the quantum bands, there is a discharge as the instruments interface with his nervous system. In the midst of the light show, William Wesley swears that he saw something big and unearthly. Over the next few hours, Wesley is given a barrage of tests. One of the most interesting parts of this panel is Wesley lifting a car over his head. The Crusader used the quantum bands for super strength, and here we see Wesley doing the same thing, but Quasar never uses them in such a way. This question of using the quantum bands for super strength shows up on the letters page, where we're told that Wendell could potentially use them in the same manner, but the issue is never addressed in the series. With each new task, William Wesley begins to glow more wildly, and Tony Stark calls a halt to the exercise. As Tony Stark tries to remove the bands with magno clamps, William Wesley begins to freak out because the bands aren't coming off and he can feel the energy bubbling up inside of him. Wesley flies into the air trying to fight the rising energy levels off. Unable to control the power coursing through him, William Wesley disintegrates just like the Crusader. While everybody is still shaken up over the disappearance of William Wesley, Dr. Zane puts out a signal which calls in the assault troops of the high-tech terrorist group A.I.M. Before switching over to the upcoming battle, check out Dr. Vaughn's unemotional response to William Wesley's death. A.I.M. appears to have sent in a rather impressive force to try to take the quantum bands, outnumbering the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents 10-1. As the fray opens, Wendell calls out to his father, who only now recognizes that his son is present. In the face of overwhelming odds and his father's life in danger, Wendell Vaughn makes the ballsiest choice of his life. He reaches up, grabs the quantum bands, and puts them onto his wrist while his father watches in horror. Wendell experiences a brief discharge, the same as William Wesley, and for a moment he sees the form of Aeon and the domed city of Uranus. Wendell snaps out of it and leaps to his feet, saving him and his father from the next attack. With some quick advice from his father, Wendell goes on the attack. Wendell takes to the quantum bands like a natural, learning how to fly within moments. He's shot, but amazingly can absorb the energy blast of A.I.M.'s soldiers. Wendell is suddenly grappled from behind, and as he panics, he feels the energy inside him growing out of control. Not wanting to end up like Wesley, Wendell looks for ways to defuse the energy buildup. After all the droids have been destroyed, Wendell takes a direct hit from the mothership. Once again, he's shocked to find that the blast didn't hurt him, but he warns everybody else to stay back because he's scared that he could hurt somebody with the amount of energy he's absorbed. Not wanting to explode, Wendell sends a powerful bolt of energy right back at the A.I.M. mothership, after which it begins to retreat. Gilbert tries to shout a warning to his son, but Wendell can't hear him. Wendell knows he's close to blowing up, so he tries to expend all of his energy in one blast. The resulting blow tears the A.I.M. mothership in half and sends it crashing to the ground. Wendell is now full of more energy than ever. Not wanting to hurt anybody, he climbs high into the atmosphere. Mentally, he says his goodbyes and decides to give in. Wendell relaxes and lets the energy flow. He rides it like a wave, and to his surprise, he doesn't explode, and the energy begins to dissipate. On his way back to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Wendell wonders if he's found the secret to controlling the wristbands. He remembers that both Wesley and the Crusader panicked and tried to fight the flow. In the end, it was Wendell's lack of a killer instinct that saved his life. Wendell returns to S.H.I.E.L.D. to let them know that he plans on leaving for an unpopulated area to work on controlling the bands where nobody will get hurt. But Gilbert asks his son to stay so that they can share the experience of working through this. Wendell is torn, not knowing if this is the plea of a dispassionate scientist who doesn't want to see his prize guinea pig run off, or if it's the words of a loving father. Wendell gets his answer once he lands, and his father grabs him in an unexpected emotional embrace. Nick Fury breaks up this touching moment, saying he heard that Agent Vaughn single-handedly stopped an AIM attack. Nick Fury offers Wendell a promotion. In the weeks that follow, Wendell Vaughn is given a copy of the original Marvel Boys uniform and takes his name. His days are filled with special powers training in the company of other special operatives, and his evenings are filled with scientific testing in the company of his father. It'll be another 6 months before Wendell leaves S.H.I.E.L.D. and forges a legend all his own. The Legend of Quazar. We'll eventually get to this change, but over the next several episodes, I'm going to be following Wendell through his time as he's enrolled in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fledgling super agent program, beginning in Captain America number 217. What's your favorite Quasar story? Let me know in the comments below. I always appreciate people hitting those buttons. Thanks. I'm out.